had a friend who, when he first came here, we're used to in the Arabic culture when you're, sitting with people and people are like giving you like tea or sweets or snacks, This is the dishwasher. Josh and I talk a lot about different... Oh, hello.
Oh, yeah.
No, Woody, come here. No, he's hiding. Yeah. Woody. Josh and I talk a lot about different cultures, like where he comes from, where I come from, not just on a daily basis, but whenever like an incident happens or a topic comes up, we try to like compare points of views, but from the different background that we come from. And it made us both realize that an identity is a bit more complex and multi-layered, and it's not only connected to a culture or a nationality or a religion or whatnot.
And it's also sometimes it's hard to understand each other, even though you talk like definitely like moments where you're just like, yeah, but this is the culture, and but then you would agree with it. That's sometimes you see that even though you want to understand each other, sometimes it's just hard to get on the same page, I guess.
Well, I think it's also sometimes it's hard for me, not necessarily for you, but in the process of talking about things in our different cultures, I also try to understand myself, because for me it's a bit more complex than Josh. I I was born and raised in Bahrain, a tiny little island, as I mentioned, in the Middle East. An Arabic culture, traditional, an Islamic kind of atmosphere, an Islamic country. But I've also lived in the US for a little over 7 years, from the age of 19 and onwards for 7 years. And that's where I studied my bachelor's, that's where I've worked, that's where I made most of my friends, and learned about politics, culture, entertainment, lifestyle. Like I've picked up a lot from there. And then I moved to Europe to do my master's, and that's where also I met Josh. And living in the Netherlands, the host culture is what you call it, has also kind of impacted me. So
yes, it's been like several formative sort of cultural experiences for you. What I've noticed is that like, you wanted to all match up and all like, combine everything and merge everything. And sometimes it's hard to like, even for you to understand, like, what is it that I want? I've noticed that happening.
There's so many funny things, because sometimes also Josh asks me about our culture, my culture, meaning the one from Bahrain, like the Arabic one, and asks me, for example, what's the appropriate way to approach this topic or this subject. And I don't necessarily feel like I always give him a representative answer of what other people feel like, because I myself have experienced things differently. So it's hard for me to give him the exact like proper advice or like the proper way to what I would think is, I realized, okay, my family and friends, or just friends of family back home, don't think it's okay. What?
No, I was just thinking of an incident. Like for example, like when I was in Bahrain, like I got different sort of sources of information about how to greet women. So that makes it just super awkward, like, because some say like, oh yeah, you shouldn't shake hands, and some say like, you definitely shouldn't hug. But then sometimes someone, like a woman, would hug me, and I was like, okay, this is happening. But then like, so like it's always kind of like you're waiting for the other person to do something. So like when the other person's just standing there, you just kind of give a little bow, which is super awkward.
You just bowed?
No, it's just like this, like hello, like it's just like you kind of like nod hello, but it comes a little bow.
So I wish I had a video of that for you guys. For the longest time, I kind of identified myself. I've always said like, I'm an Arabic woman. I'm a woman from the Middle East. I'm a Bahraini woman, and I take pride in that so much that I kind of forgot that that's not the only thing that I identify with. I think like why we're also talking about this topic, and it's important because we're not perfect. We don't know exactly what a healthy identity looks like yet. Like I'm still trying to figure it out. I think it's easier for Josh a bit because what has impacted your lifestyle and culture is not necessarily different cultures and different vibes.
Well, there's definitely like I agree that it's probably a lot easier for me because we live here.
Yeah.
But there's definitely things I struggle with from the Middle Eastern culture and like,
Yeah.
sort of things I don't necessarily find fair or justified. And these are
Yeah.
things I definitely struggle with as well, because then I see it in your or your family, or you know, like happening to your family or to you.
Yeah.
And
I think your frustration is mostly about like how I struggle with it,
Yeah.
and not necessarily you're not struggling with your identity as much as I'm
No.
struggling with my identity, because most of my family still live back home, and the friends that I've made also in high school, we're not really close anymore, but they're all there. But I think sometimes I forget and other people forget that I have lived abroad and worked abroad and, you know, established a life abroad, that I'm not just Bahraini anymore. I'm also American. And I'm also now trying to integrate into the Dutch culture that has a lot of influences in my life and our relationship. And therefore it's not as easy, and I struggle with it and I forget about it sometimes, that I think it's important to realize it's okay that you don't have it all figured out yet. And it's okay that you're not just one thing or the other. It's also okay if you want to be one thing, if you just want to be Dutch or just want to be an American. But that's for you to decide and you to figure out. And sometimes it's not as easy when you're on your own, like you're the closest people to you are not necessarily going through the same experience. So it's hard for them to also understand that who you are is probably not what they think or who they remember that you are. For me especially, like I left the country at a young age at 19, and that's where they remember me from, my family. They know me and they talk to me, but they haven't been in my life.
And they also
daily life.
and they also haven't sort of like had the same cultural experiences as you.
Yeah.
That makes it a big difference as well, I think. Like, and that's what you struggle with, because on the one side you have that, you know, you have your family and you have your your experiences and memories there, but then on the other side you also have, you know, like a new
well, I think changes. You go through changes that they don't see. So the changes that you go through, whether it's like, you know, political affiliations or, you know, cultural progress, if you will, or just ideas about anything. Usually you get that through your experiences, you know, either in work or, you know, other friends that you've met. Woo. And they don't see that because they're not with you in that, and they either are still in the same experience or had a different experience completely. There's no like crossing paths.
Yeah.
And I think for you, because you're with me every day and you see me, and I feel bad for Josh because we have a lot of intense discussions, and I struggle, and he tries to help me, but it's also difficult because he tries to help me from his perspective, his very different experience and his cultural background, the values that he thinks are right, which sometimes clashes with the values from the Middle East.
But it's not just the values, you know, it's also sort of
practice, or
like for example, you know, like for you, certain like celebrations like in both American and in Middle Eastern culture are important to you, and you know, I haven't grown up with that, and we're only two people here, so
it's easier to celebrate Dutch like Sinterklaas or like whatever,
Christmas,
because the entire country celebrates it, and with my family, and here it's like I have to create it myself. And I also feel the pressure, not from anybody but from within myself, is like, we have to celebrate Eid, we have to, because if we don't, no one else will with us, and like I have to create that, and it's becoming more of a nostalgic and like kind of a responsibility that I actually still want to do. Because like, how do you create that in-between bubble for you that is okay? And then not having to sacrifice part of your identity just to be able to cross over, I think.
It's kind of tricky to explain, but I think what is important is that, you know, like you decide what is important to you, and you don't sacrifice anything for anyone else, right?
Yeah, and that's difficult because like Josh again talks from his cultural experience and like what's kind of expected here. Like I find it hard for me to explain to him that this advice does not work in the Middle East, for example. I think people here don't see, at least most, of course we're not trying to generalize, but most families and Josh's family, they don't see each individual's actions as reflective of their own. Whereas in the Middle East, it's like a community-based, you know, a family is like a tight-knit family. You have the same last name and people know the family by their last name, and therefore if one person, you know, commits a scandal, and then the definition of a scandal is also very different from here and there, but it's reflective on the whole family, and the whole family and like the community, you know, have to justify or kind of carry that burden with them, or maybe deal with it.
That's Woody?
Woody, it's okay. Come here.
Woody.
Come here. Woody!
Woody.
Very protective, this one.
Okay.
Hi, come here. Oh, he's sitting right under our feet. You guys can't see him.
I know.
Him. And what's funny is people are like, yeah, but you don't live in Bahrain. You already live in the Netherlands. You've lived in the US. What's the problem? Yes, that's true. But just because you're not there anymore, that doesn't mean you're not part of the family.
I mean, it's the same in, like in a relationship. In a relationship, you have to change a bit as well. You know,
Yeah.
like you do different things differently because you're in a relationship. And sometimes you know, like I have these moments where I'm like, is this important to me? Or is this
Do I want to make a point?
Is this part of my identity, or do I really not care?
What is your identity? How do you like?
I don't know, like there's certain things I did differently when I was single, you know, like or
But that's just behavior. But like when somebody says like how do you identify yourself? Like who is Josh? What comes to your mind?
I have no idea. Like it's not like one thing. It's not like I definitely don't feel like I'm Dutch, like in a way, but like.
But do you say I'm Dutch when somebody else?
Well, yeah, but like my culturally, like nationally, like I'm Dutch, sure, but
Yeah.
like culturally, like I don't feel necessarily that I'm just Dutch.
Yeah.
What I am is I have no idea, like you know, but I do feel that.
You're an Arab wannabe. I'm a convert. I had a friend who, when he first came here, you know, we're used to in the Arabic culture when you're, you know, sitting with people and people are like giving you like tea or sweets or snacks, you know. This is the dishwasher. It should stop soon.
Hopefully.
But when somebody offers you like, you know, snacks or whatever when you're at their house, sometimes you just take a little bit and then just say no thank you out of politeness, like no thank you, and then they come back again, you're like, oh no thank you, you don't have to. It's just like this back and forth. And my friend came here, and the first time he was at a Dutch friend's house, like they offered some cookies and he said, oh no thank you, and the Dutch guy just walked away. It's like, okay. And then my friend was like, oh no, I want some cookies, come back, you know. But it's just like, you have to learn that not everything works here, and vice versa. But that's completely different, off topic. But
and the other thing, like that you just refuse to accept in Dutch culture is the fact that when it's your birthday, apparently in Dutch culture,
oh yeah,
you bring cake to work.
This makes no sense.
Which to me makes no sense either. I've never understood that. I do it just because it's sort of like a social construct that I've learned to
It's
accept.
my birthday. You better be buying me cake. I don't understand why I'm buying you cake.
I've never understood that either. Like it's my birthday, here's cake.
But our kids are going to be confused because then in school, their friends are going to be doing that. And here, it'd be like, no.
I did do that in school though. I just remember.
You did?
Yeah, you brought something for the entire class. So you made this little like sort of, I don't know, like gift.
No, but I think that when I was in school, actually, my parents did the same. But it's more like they're throwing me a birthday party at school,
right,
with my friends. But if there's no party, I'm not just gonna go and bring cake. I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
These issues, like how are we gonna even raise our kids? According to what? Actually, what's funny is now that we're planning our wedding.
Yeah.
A lot of things, as like I talk and like prepare, talk to vendors. It's very clear to them, like, first of all, this is not the Dutch way to do it. But then they're like, is this the Arabic way? I'm like, no, it's actually not. And a lot of it is actually the American way. And I think it's confusing for some people. Like, why are we doing this like this? That's not Dutch, and you're Arabic, and Josh is Dutch. Why, you know? And I realize that living in America and, you know, so having spent a long time there.
Yeah.
A lot of things that I do in my daily life and like take with me is very much taken from the American culture. And our wedding is going to be kind of a mix of, I guess, 3 in a way.
Probably, yeah.
But that's the beauty of it. It's like,
well, that's a nice
diversity.
Yeah, that would be a nice sort of like example of like what would be nice. So, but that's.
And it's great, and it's nice, and it's you know, diverse, and it's unique, and it's you.
I've learned a lot about, or I think I learned a lot about, like, you know, Middle Eastern culture that I didn't know before, and that's also like very interesting. But you know, I also like want to learn more. interested in the women wearing the, like, what is it called, burqa? Like,
The burqa, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, why are they wearing it? So I was asking all these questions, like, why are they wearing it? What is the purpose, and then I was like, can I talk to them? And then someone told me, like, yeah, of course you can. Like, if you want to get beaten up by the husband, so it's like one of these things, where you're just like, no, you don't talk to them. It's like, oh, okay. Like,
but that's also very stereotypical. Like, you don't know. Not everybody who was wearing a hijab is the same, and not everybody who's not wearing a hijab is the same. Everybody has their own boundaries, and a lot of them might be similar, but it's not. Assumption is, I think, the worst thing you can do. Like, asking questions is a good way to
yeah,
go.
Absolutely.
But also, not all Dutch people are the same.
Yeah. Well.
No, they're not. They're not. Of course, there are things that are more like mainstream and widespread in a culture, but not everybody is the same.
No.
And just because you're a Muslim doesn't mean all Muslims are the same and practice the same way. And just because you're a Christian or you're Dutch or you're whatever you are, not everybody's the same. So I think everybody has to be open-minded to kind of understand who you're talking to, who's in front of you, and appreciate their experiences and really know where they're coming from. Identity is not as simple, and it's not one thing, and it's hard to explain it to others who have not gone through a similar experience. And now, as we're like in times of globalization and also social media, I think more and more people have a multi-layered identity. They've lived in places, they grew up in a different place, they work in a different place, and they're connected to a completely different place. And having to bring all of that in one circle that represents you is really difficult, but then also...
It's very sort of personal as well, I think.
It's very personal, and it's...
Because maybe someone that had the exact same experience as you, like traveling all over the globe.
But doesn't have the same struggles,
doesn't have the same struggles, or like identifies as different, like it just depends on who you are as well. And I think
and I think it's a certain expectations, but it's not just, the Middle East, it's also here. Like, Josh's family, now that I live here and we're working here and, this is kind of our home base, there's the expectation that, like, I have to speak Dutch now, and, like, they refer to me sometimes as, like, you're a Dutch girl now, and out of rebellion, I'm like, I'm not. I'm not a Dutch girl, and just because,
I say the same, though, like, she's not a Dutch girl.
Yeah. Well, not because I don't, like, there's nothing wrong with Dutch girl, but it's just so oversimplified in a very innocent way. It's the same where, like, you're an Arabic Muslim girl. I'm like, not necessarily. You're a Dutch girl, also not necessarily. I'm a little bit of both, and I'm my own thing now, and I don't really represent one thing or the other.
We have our experience, which is, I think, unique in its own way. But it would be interesting to hear from other people experiences and what they've done, what they like challenges they've overcome or still working on, or funny anecdotes is also
anecdotes, advice maybe, or just like you want to say, hey, we hear you, we also are on a similar boat or not.
Yeah, and you can have an email list, or you can comment.
You can leave a comment, you can ask us questions that we can answer in the next episode, and our email shows here at the bottom, so you can send us an email. And
don't forget to subscribe.
Yes, to our channel.